Okay, guys, welcome back to Eldest Born, a Three Brothers podcast. Now, I just got finished playing the first tree, which roughly took me about 2.5 hours to complete, so I did it in one sitting. Let's watch the launch trailer just to give you a little bit of an idea of what this game is about.
Are you awake?
It was just a dream.
No, it's okay. Tell me what happened.
I saw a fox looking for her missing cubs. And along the way, the land told my story. A path was illuminated before her, and it led to something ancient, something with answers. So she ran. It's a difficult path to the first tree, but each of us must eventually take it, including me.
So, that kind of gives you an idea of what the game looks like. Now, this game is available to purchase digitally. I think that's one of the only ways you can get it. But for those of you who are like me, who really enjoy physical copies of your games and reject the idea that all games should be digital in the future, I have in my hands a limited run physical copy of the game. And I just want to take a look at this real quick. It's really beautiful case. It's number 255 from the limited run website. And I think it's one of 1,000 prints that they made, and it comes with a free poster of the cover art, which I think is really cool and beautiful. A game manual, which just tells you what the controls are, and it has a letter from the developer, which I actually think I'm going to read right now. The letter says, about a year after my game came out, I had been invited to the Smithsonian American Art Museum, an unbelievable opportunity. I had grown up near Washington, D.C., and attended the museum on multiple school field trips, so it meant a lot to me. I remember a 14-year-old boy coming up to me and studying the game carefully for about 15 minutes, not breaking eye contact for anything. He eventually came up to me with a simple and understandable question. Why is your game called The First Tree? I opened my mouth like I was going to recite the elevator pitch I had repeated 1,000 times, then stopped. I actually hadn't answered that question before. I stumbled with my words because even though I knew the answer perfectly in my head, I just didn't even know where to begin. I now know better how to answer that question in this letter to you. The player. Right as I started college in 2010, my father unexpectedly died from a heart attack. My little brother was with him in the car when it happened, but they stumbled into a medical clinic that luckily was nearby. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to save him, and my family was left to put together the pieces. To say it was hard is an understatement. It was a slap in the face. I put my inner turmoil on hold while my faith in God helped me move on to school, marriage, and eventually fatherhood. I became a father myself to a beautiful girl named Evelyn. I remember doing the dishes late as a sleep-deprived zombie when it hit me. The first tree, a symbol of life and death, coexisting, not in harmony, but in acceptance of each other. I imagined a fox walking up to it, pleading for her burdens to be lifted. I chose a fox since it was a family name of my wife's side, and her presence made my whole world brighter and more bearable. At its core, that's what the first tree is about, family. It's also about how losing family shapes us. You see, without those painful memories of my dad passing away, I wouldn't be the man I am to help my little girl. This story couldn't have been written, this physical game case you're holding wouldn't exist, and most unexpectedly for me, the game wouldn't have helped the thousands of people who have messaged me saying thank you for helping them say goodbye to their own loved ones. That's what I would have told the 14-year-old kid, that the worst loss can still give life well after you're gone. It's been like that since the first tree on earth sprouted out of the ground, and it's true for foxes and people alike. I would wish my father back into existence in a heartbeat if I could. However, I am grateful for what the loss gave me. That pain gave me the determination to emulate my amazing father with my own children now. That pain gave me a humble video game about a fox which brings comfort to people like my own mother, or to people as far as Vietnam. Thank you for trying my game, and a huge thanks to all the people who made it a reality. I hope the first tree brings understanding and comfort to you like it did for me. Sincerely, David Well. So that is a very touching letter from the game designer, the person who wrote the game and developed it. And, this is just some exclusive content I have in this physical edition. No one else really has this. There was only 1,000 copies made. And it's definitely a heartfelt game designed with a lot of good intentions. I personally wish I would have enjoyed it more. I do understand what he was going for and how this journey of developing this game was an emotional one that was very personal to him. Now, I honestly have a lot to say about this game, but first, I'm going to explain a little bit of the storyline. Spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear about what the game is actually about, you can skip ahead. So, you have a narrator, and I think his name is Joseph, and he's speaking with his girlfriend. Her name is Rachel. And basically, they're talking about some of his childhood memories between him and his father. Now, while all this is happening, he mentions that he's been having a dream about this fox. And you start the game off playing as the fox. Now, the first thing that happens from the fox's point of view is you come across one of your cubs and they are dead. And that's unfortunate, but you continue on through this world to find the rest of your children. Now, I found this landscape to be pretty big and also pretty empty. There was not a lot to interact with, and the only thing you could really do throughout the game is collect these little shiny stars that were scattered around the environment. And I honestly found this to be kind of tedious and not that fulfilling. Now, because the landscape is so vast, you spend a lot of time running and not really doing much. Occasionally you come across these dig sites where the fox is able to dig up an artifact of Joseph's past. Now, this triggers the narrator, Joseph, to start recalling memories between him and his father. Now, throughout the storyline of this fox going after her cubs and trying to find them, you find out that Joseph's father has passed away, and he's describing these memories to his girlfriend, Rachel, as a way of kind of coping with the passing of his father and the idea that he isn't going to see him anymore. He unburdens himself of many regrets and uncomfortable memories, and Rachel tries her best to console him. Now, throughout most of the game, I found this narrative very disconnected from the storyline of the fox. And because the game took a lot longer than I thought it should and had very little to interact with, I found myself running around aimlessly with no real sense of direction, and didn't really know what I was looking for. Eventually, you come across another fox cub who is unfortunately dead, and you find out that the culprit is this ominous black wolf who has been killing the fox's cubs. The storyline progresses, and Joseph continues to talk about his relationship with his father and the sadness he feels of his father's death. Now, I don't want to offend anybody who has ever lost a loved one or a parent. I know it can be a grief-stricken occasion, which is hard to really process at times. But I personally didn't really connect with the storyline of Joseph in the game because the gameplay and the narrative just didn't match up for me. Towards the end, the fox finally found her final cub, also dead from the hands of the wolf. And eventually, you're led to an ancient site called the First Tree. And this tree represents life. And it represents the new birth of all things. And the fox returns there as a way of acknowledging the loss that she underwent from her children and this realization that she needs to move on and that life is a cycle. It's not always an end. It can also be a new beginning of life. So once the 2-hour long exploration process with the fox comes to an end, you find out that all the little star collectibles that you ran around getting turn out to be your character limit for writing a note that's inscribed on the first tree at the end of the game. Now, I happened to collect 125 stars, so I had a character limit of 125 characters, and this is what I wrote. Now, it didn't quite fit because they don't tell you when you're running out of characters before you press finish on the note, so it kind of got cut short. But the gimmick behind this is that this anonymous note gets sent to the game server online, and other players can randomly see it at the end of their game, which I think is pretty cool. But long story short, once Joseph awakens from his fox dream, you get to control him, and he wakes up in his bedroom, and he lives in Alaska. So you exit his house and you walk through the woods where you come to a campsite. And upon inspecting this tent that's empty, he looks further into the distance and he sees the spirit of the fox he was dreaming about. Now you spend 10 more minutes of the game running through the mountains of Alaska following this fox spirit, and you eventually get led to a smaller representation of the first tree. Now, Joseph's father was a lumberjack, and trees have a lot of symbolism in this game. So there is a kind of bittersweet emotional reaction you get when you find out that Joseph's father used to inscribe notes to him on different pieces of wood as a child. And they even carved their names into a tree at one point in the game. He describes this memory vividly. So you approach this tree after following the spirit of the fox, and when you get to the tree, you see an inscribed note, and I can only assume that the note I received was written by another player and was uploaded to the server like I uploaded my note. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I have to be honest about what I thought playing this game. Although I do appreciate what they were going for with this game, I think the art style is really pretty and the use of color was very vibrant. I did not have a great time playing this game, I have to be honest. And I don't usually like to leave negative reviews, but for me, this game was kind of a waste of a couple hours. All in all, it was definitely a art piece, although I do think the gameplay was very clunky. The fox was kind of floaty and hard to control, and even when you start off the game, you're walking around at a very slow pace, and you just realize by looking at the controls menu that you can run. And I think it's kind of pointless to even have a walking mechanic in this game because it's so big, but you just press the square button on the PlayStation and it just runs the entire time. So think what you will about that. I also kind of found it funny that this fox, even though it's just an ordinary fox, has a double jump feature, which allows it to reach higher elevations in its jump, which was just kind of funny because it was an unrealistic feature for a somewhat realistic animal. Well, anyway, I can't say I recommend this game, but it was a very interesting playthrough, and I don't regret it. In terms of rating, I would have to give the gameplay a 2 out of 5. It was just okay. Like I said, I didn't love it. I thought it was clunky. And the storyline, although it touched on some hard topics that can be relatable for a lot of us, I honestly didn't like the delivery and the disjointedness between the gameplay and the narrative. So I have to give the story probably a 2 out of 5 also. So that comes out to a grand total of 4 out of 10. So that's my personal opinion, that's my rating, and I'm sticking with it. Well, thanks for tuning in, and keep a lookout for my upcoming video in which I will be reviewing the next indie game in our series, Creature Comforts.